So firstly, I want to thank Payfast, or we'd like to thank Payfast, Accenture Digital, Derivco, Fjord, Click to Customer, Inclusive Solutions, Intridia, Isoflow, Deloitte Digital, Pearson Publishing, Expedia, Balsamic, as well as HFI, Human Factors International, for giving us some awesome swag material for your bags.
Hi, I'm Eric. Oh, wow, it's great to see so many colleagues. It's really good. So I'm head of Human Factors International. Been running it since 1981, so I'm really old. Yeah, you get it. And really, we're three different companies. We do UX engineering work, projects. We also stand up UX practices. We'll talk about that. And you know us probably for our training and certification. We've been hanging out in Joburg for about 8 years now. And so we have some idea of what this environment's like. And we walk the walk. So these are like design programs for different companies, and we can't fit the logos on anymore. It's like, all right. I'm going to talk about just two things today. Okay? One, I want to talk a little bit about our field. And I want to share with you some ways of thinking about it, some of the kinds of things that I talk about, some of our history, some context. And then I want to talk about my passionate area of institutionalization of UX. How do we build industrial strength practices? It's our turn. It's finally our turn. So there was a point where the information age was just about getting the hardware to work, and like IBM ruled, right? And you'd go to them and say, like, that's not very usable. They were like, this is hard to build. It should be hard to use. It's okay. Right? And then hardware became a commodity, and software became the differentiator. Microsoft ruled, and as long as it didn't crash, you were happy. And now software is a commodity. We outsource it to India and Estonia and stuff like that. It's not a differentiator. So nobody wins because they can code. Today, the differentiator is us. Can you make stuff that's usable? And so it's finally our turn. Now, there's a field of how to do that. There's a field of how to engineer a user experience. And it's a confusing field, because I think I've been called all those different things. Like, what the hell? We're about making things simple and straightforward, and then we name ourselves something different every 10 minutes. Who knows, when did this field start? Come on, you're in it, right? So the origination of the field was in World War II. There was a little problem that the engineers laid out cockpits however they felt like each time. So every cockpit was different. And they'd have a little problem, like an aircraft would be delivered to an airfield, and suddenly that airfield was being bombed and strafed, and a pilot would run out, jump in this brand new plane, and look at it like, I can't fly this. So there was one case where he's like taxiing around. I can taxi it, but I can't take off. And the bombs going everywhere. And so the Air Force went, what do we do about this? And they got a bunch of psychologists. And they said, how should we lay it out? And those psychologists used the same methods we use today to lay out a screen. Visual link analysis and stuff like that. And they created this, which is the Sacred Six. And it's used even today. That's the beginning of our field. So thank you for not introducing me as a founder of the field, which sometimes happens because I'm not that old. But the important thing is we're standing on those people. They're pretty much gone. Chapanis, Sid Smith, the guys I learned from. And now my kids are in the field. That's a third generation. So we've been around quite a while. We know how to do this work. Don't try to invent it. Let's build on the field. When I started, it was mostly like mainframe stuff. And it looked like this. Like, you'd be like, all right, so this is an insurance system policy number, and the transit date is MDDYY. You know, like, what? Yeah, January is 1, February is 2, October's O, November's N, December's D. No, you have to remember that. And then you just go freaking down the screen, and it's YYMN. Next screen is like MMDDYYYY. You're like, why? Right? Then you get something like this. It says, address change inquiry. Do you want to change the address? And you say, no, I don't want to change the address. It then goes, looks on file, see if the address is there. If the address is not there, it comes back and says, well, but you have to. Right? It's like the kiosk they have at the airport, and you go into it and you're like, hey, I can check in. Cool. Card, and it says, Eric Schaffer, welcome in flight. Would you like to upgrade to first class? And you go, yeah. And then it says, but you can't. It's like, all right, thanks. And then it's like, okay, so you have to enter, and then you depress the enter key. It's like, you're too small. You're made of plastic. Right? And then you have to enter the check number, but you have to add these zeros. The check number is less than 11 positions. So the task becomes to count up the number of character positions in the check number, subtract that from 11, key in that number of zeros, and then key the check number. So this was the beginning of the stuff I did. And people would come and say, you know, it's a mainframe, it has to be ugly. It's not true. Like, what is this? It's like, it's an insurance app. But what if I do this? You can do good design. You can do the same kind of structural design that we do today in any environment. USSD does not have to be horrible. A little bit, but today something really cool has happened. Forrester comes out. Have you seen this stuff? Have you seen? No? Forrester's putting it out to your CEOs. And what this study shows is that stock price correlates with how good you are at customer experience. Right? The total value of the company. Right? And so what you see is like 93% of companies now have good customer experience as, you know, like one of their strategic priorities. The bad thing is the executive has no idea what that means. But at least it's good they understand. They understand that it's a differentiator. That is the differentiator today. Nobody wins because they have good laptops. It's a commodity. So, cool thing. And they're right, because we can see that when you spend about 10% of your development budget on UX, you get enormous returns. By the way, write that down, 10%. 10% of your head count, 10% of the budget. Pretty much an industry standard. We've been saying it for a long time. And that's true. So we see this kind of ROI on usability again and again and again. This is an example from a program we did. It's a company that's both a mutual fund company and sells insurance. So we did typical stuff, right? Expert review, omni-channel, competitive review, user research. We did an omni-channel strategy. I'll talk more about that. How many people have heard of omni-channel strategy? Okay, a few. How many know what it means? Okay, we'll see. But in any case, what we saw was, well, we got a good net promoter score. Woo. Executives like net promoter score, but it's pretty much crap. We really don't care. One of the things, though, we saw the time that people spent looking at the site went way up. That can be bad. It's like they're looking at the site, what the hell is this? But hopefully in this case, it was because they were more engaged. So it's a measure of engagement. And they went from the worst in the industry to the best, and they were better than even things like newspapers. So people spent real time on the site, which is good. And the thing that matters is leads went up like 179%. Okay, that's good. That's what I want to see. So the business results are there. No matter what you're working on, those business results may be different, but they're so clearly there. One other thing we're doing is we're migrating people doing more things online, right? So we have this huge role to play. This is an intranet. It's not customer-facing, but we still see stuff like, this is Syncrude. It's their intranet, and you can see what a mess. So we put standards in place, put a central portal in place. Training time went from 8 hours to 15 minutes. Or this is ConocoPhillips. This is their HR portal. Central portal, improve the usability. Calls to the help desk went from 300 a day to 0. Okay? So one of the things you need to do, if you're in the UX field in an organization, is figure out why the organization cares. And put it into something you can say in one breath. Okay? And different organizations care about different things. Be clear. Right? So this is from a bank. I want to capture wallets, capture markets, and control service costs. You teach your executive championship, champion this, and they have to say it like 30,000 times. Or this is a different one. We just want to avoid train wrecks. Every one of these red boxes will fail. It's like, let's send out the product like that. And they didn't. Or this is from the World Bank Group. So we're working there, and it's like, well, do you want to save money? And they were like, no, we have all the money. And so, but for them, we can't eradicate poverty using awkward apps. That's what they care about. So you have to explain to your management why UX is in fact important. Because they don't know. They just saw the stuff. Another company is like, what is it? It's and. Lower service costs and improved quality and innovation and productivity. Okay, fine. Whatever it is. You need to understand in your organization what the negative forces are around doing UX. There's a set of misconceptions. And when you understand what they are, you can battle those things. It's like, right? So, what are people thinking? You need to know. It's fighting it. My God. And if you get too many of them, find another place to work. But we're really at a cool point now. Do you know Jared Spool? Kind of colleague. Jared wrote recently that he thinks we're at a tipping point where organizations are getting it. When you do UX, good things happen. When you do it seriously. It's like my sister. She's the fourth dan in Aikido. And she used to go around New York City with Yamada Sensei, and they'd go to bars, and they would intentionally get in fights. And they would like, and the person would be like on the ground, and Yamada Sensei would go, Aikido works. So UX works. It really does. I don't know if you've seen the latest results for Standard Bank and FNB and all that. So all of a sudden, Standard Bank, now we had a conference recently, and the guy, Abdul Anocha from Standard Bank, he's standing up talking, and people are like, you're doing all this UX stuff. Where is it? And all of a sudden you see, looks like this. Because UX works. All right, so we make complex systems easier. We persuade people and all that. We know how to do UX work. You don't have to invent it. Okay? And UX work is not like do UX. There's a set of defined methods we apply. And it's well understood. Yeah, there are variants, you can do agile things, but there's a set of activities that we need to do. So the core of it, the most important one, okay, we're in Apple, is an omni-channel strategy. And what an omni-channel strategy does say, let me look at the big picture and figure out what we should design and how it's all going to fit together. Because many times I've done projects in the past where I've built a really great design, but it was the usable wrong thing. So what an omni-channel strategy does is say, give me a picture of what we're going to build, and I'll build a part of it, but I know how it fits in. I know how the channels are going to work together. And if you're like me, you get asked like every third day, why is Apple doing so well? You've looked at Apple stuff, right? iTunes. Design is, it's not wonderful. It actually sucks. Their designs are not that wonderful. Why are they rocking and rolling? It's because they have an ecosystem solution. Because iPod fits with an iTunes, fits with a Genius Bar, and all this stuff fits together, and it's a solution for me. That's where things are going today. Whether you're a telco or a bank or what, you need an ecosystem solution. You look at Sony. Sony builds better MP3 players, nicely designed Japanese, but they're selling their headquarters. Apple is thinking about becoming its own sovereign state. Right? Sony's selling its headquarters because they don't get the ecosystem solution. So we have to design that ecosystem solution. And to do that, we have to understand what we're designing for, the environment we're in. You can't just go, hey, let's take what we designed in the US and drop it into South Africa. Yeah, that'll work. So that picture of the different, and it's an ethnographically inspired methodology, that's really key. If you don't do this, this is a true case. You're a bank customer, and you go in and it's like, hey, you can use internet banking, cool. You can use cell phone banking, all right. And then there's telephone banking is different than cell phone banking. And then you have speech banking, that's different than cell phone. And you have .mobi. Where the hell do I go? Right? In intranets, we have the same thing. These are our collaboration environments in one company. Where do I go? Right? So the problem is we have lots of channels, and they need to coordinate as a whole. People need to be able to be told in one breath, this is where you go, right? Or you have this stuff like, okay, I'm with this telco, and I just want to find the latest song, and, right? So it's our job to solve this. And it's our job to have that solution and then push it into the organization, because nobody else is going to make it work. Sometimes when you're in this field, you gotta think that there's some like really evil people in the company, right? They're like demons. But in fact, what happens, and the reason it's so bad, is that you have separate groups working in separate technologies, and each one creates its own individual experience. And they're not coordinated, there's no one working between them going, we need to have a single unified experience except us. And there's like only one of you and 15,000 of them. So, but if you have a proper UX organization, it serves the function of making a single experience. And it's complicated because you have different kinds of users, each needing their own experience. Today, we're starting to think about things like, pervasive information architecture, right? So I have my website, and the structure of the website might fit the structure of the store, or maybe not. But we try to do that. Once you have an omni-channel strategy, then I'm just doing the classical stuff. So I do structural design. And structural design, the secret is, I understand the user's deep mental model. I know how they think about it, And then I make the design match the neurological structure. So actually, you could go into their heads, they'd scream, and you would find neurons that would reflect that structure. If you do this, your user will look at it and go, oh, yeah, okay. I mean, they won't go, wow. They'll go, oh, yeah, okay. And then you really succeeded, right? They'll go like, oh, how long did it take you to design that? All right, so here's an example. This is Singapore Health Promotion Board, and they've spent a lot of money developing low-fat recipes. You want to find the low-fat recipes? Where do you go? What do you pick? Who knows? Where? Resources. Which one? Oh, Resource Center, yeah? Ah, okay, it's not there. Search, yeah, really, that's failure. Okay, they can't use it to search it. Right. Hell yeah, that's another failure, okay. You have to hit HPBE resources, then healthy fun, then healthy recipes. Note to self, if the user can't find it, the function is not there. Right? So what we do is we take structures that don't work well. This is a common kind of problem. When Windows first came out, I remember like looking at it and going, well, is that better? And then these studies came out, huge improvement from Windows, and then I looked at the studies, it's like, that wasn't run right. And I call them up, it's like, yeah, it was funded by Microsoft, it's kind of like the Pepsi Challenge. So the reality is that windowing systems make it worse because of the time people spend window thrashing, unless you control it, and then it's okay. So we make designs that control window thrashing. Otherwise, people spend more time resizing and digging through windows. And we do really complicated stuff, like Insight Genomics, the whole human genome, and they have separate apps, and you go like, let's put it into one container, do the data visualization. This Reliance communication is like, I can't find anything. So you redesign it, you also make it look good. But, right, so from this to this. So that structural thing is really important. And sometimes you can't even tell, like, oh, we made it green, but the data is really strong. It's like the new design smokes the current one, smokes the competition for performance and preference. And IVR too. So the structure of an IVR, here's like 90 seconds to get through it, and here's like 22 seconds. All right. Let's talk about something new. So there's an interesting area of our field that you could get really good at, called persuasion engineering, right? We worry about whether I can do something, performance design. But we could also worry about whether I'll decide to do it. So when we talk about user experience, there are usability type things. Can I do it? And there's stuff that we call PET, persuasion, emotion, and trust. It's an HFI term, and I'm sorry. In fact, in reality, you develop trust, you can create an emotion, and then you persuade, but TEP sounded bad, so we just made it PET. It's backwards. But it's about making something engaging and converting somebody. And just like there's a couple of $1 billion worth of research that guide us in how to make something usable, there's more than that in terms of how to make something compelling. So research study. They've got guys walking around in a park in Seattle. And they've got some that are just walked across a suspension bridge, 230 feet over a river, rickety suspension bridge. And they have researchers come up to them with clipboards, and the women come up and they're like, okay, let me do it. And then they have other guys who haven't reached the bridge yet, but it's the same. Half of them we stop here, half of them we stop here. And the question in the research study is, which of the guys are more likely to ask the girl out on a date? Yeah, okay, you're right, but why? Well, no, because these people are going to walk across here. It's the same guys. But you're right. What the hell? Very, very close. Kind of the state of mind, really the state of the physiology. So I just walked through there, and my heart's beating, and I'm breathing hard. And I meet this girl, and I'm like, I'm breathing hard, my heart's beating, she must be hot. And I know that's true, because I can do the same thing with a shot of adrenaline. So we make decisions based on our emotions to a much greater extent than you would think. I mean, that's like you want to take somebody out on the first date, you go to a scary movie. Good plan, right? So we have usability kind of like this, persuasion kind of like that. Right? Our staff studied the California lottery for a while. And if you think about a lottery, particularly bankers, I love talking to bankers about it, like, okay, you've got customers, they'll come in, they'll give you money, and you only have to give like half of it back. And you go, people who play the lottery, they must have trouble with math. But it turns out that's not why they play the lottery. The lottery players know perfectly well that they're not going to win. Right? It's not an investment. It's more like spending money on a roller coaster. Right? Because it's about the emotion. It's about the excitement. That's what they do. We can study the scenarios and the emotions building as I see that, oh, there's a big thing in it, and I buy the ticket and I go home and I check and then I lose. Right? So you go like, buy the ticket, I feel hope. And then check the numbers and I'm excited and then I lose. So we're studying this stuff and you start to build around it. Like, this is the design they had. It's like, it's ergonomically, I can see the number, but is it exciting? No. So we build something that kind of looks like this. It's a game. Now, once you lose, we also know that you're going to feel like a loser. So we create a screen like this that shows, see how much goes to education? And then you feel, I'm not a loser, I'm a philanthropist. So this is from our basic class of persuasion. There are all these different kinds of methods we can use. I don't know if you've seen this one, it's one of my favorite. So they go to a mall and they set up a table and they put jam on it, people come over, they can taste the jam and buy it. Half the time they have 6 flavors, half the time 24. More come over with 24 jams, slightly more trying it. But which sells more? 6, yeah. 30% buy with 6, what percent with 24? 10? Right? So when we go, oh, I'm going to provide all these different plans you can pick from, there's a problem with decidiophobia. And you may do really badly. When we see things in context. So there's a red circle, maybe it's black here, and here's another red circle, and they don't look the same size, but I promise they are. I can change the way something looks to you by what I put near it. All right. So I'm meeting, okay. Well, I meet with a guy who's president of Macy's. We were working for him. He's like, puts his arm around me and he goes, you guys, we've like doubled sales, but you screwed up. And I'm like, what? I said, yeah, because this design, now I'm looking at it, ergonomically it's perfect, but they look at it and they go, shipping charge, taxes, forget it, I'm out of there, that's too much. It looks big. So what I do is I put a big number next to it to make it look small. You'll see they do it today. Come on. Or we can make things that are scarce. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Triggers response. Okay, so the women in the room, which of these guys is more attractive? How many think Tom is more attractive? Okay. How many think Jerry's more attractive? Okay, you're wrong. So actually, actually research shows that these are exactly equivalent in attractiveness. Okay? And I can make an ugly, Photoshop, make an ugly looking Jerry by just like tweaking his nose, or I can make an ugly looking Tom. Now if I show just these three to somebody, or just these three to somebody, what you find is, you say, oh, who would you go out with or date? The choice is different. Because I want to make a decision based on a comparison. So I'm going to see, oh, ugly Jerry, I'll pick. Okay, so the message here is if you're going out to a bar or something like that, find somebody who looks like you but a little bit uglier. But you can also make money with it. So here, The Economist goes, you can have a subscription for $59 for the .com or the print and web for $125. Okay? And 68% get the cheap one. That's not so good. So they put this out. The Economist for $59. Print subscription for $125. Print and web for $120. What? So if you can get print for $125, print and web for $125, well, who would ever pick $125? The answer is nobody, right? But look what happened to the sales. I went from 32% buying the expensive one to 84%. Ugly Jerry strategy. Okay. We'll try one last thing. I need just get a piece of paper. You can use your mobile, whatever. I'm going to show you. This is a chocolate bottle, high quality chocolate, 1.2 pounds. You can customize the label and have it delivered. And what I'd like to do, I'm going to hope this works because they put me on a new computer. So everybody on this side, close your eyes, just a minute. And you folks, I'm going to show you a number, write down that number. Okay, write that number. Then write down, oh, come on. Okay, never mind, open your eyes. But the point is, I can actually manipulate what the price is. You'll pick something by what you think about first, if it's a big number or a small number. But they messed up my displays. Forget it. Now I'm depressed. Okay. All right, let's talk about detail design. So I get the Omni-Channel Strategy, then I do the structural design, I worry about the persuasion stuff, and now I have to do detail design. And basically, detail design is about optimizing the visual, intellectual, memory, and motor activity of the user. So I think, oh, come on. All right, I'm sorry, this is just not working. All right. So, for example, can you find the phone number for Abraham Edwards? What if I do this? Little tiny difference. But I go faster and error rate's lower. So let's look at this. This is from South Africa, selling an American Express card. So it says card requirements, and I already see it says American Express up here. I know it's a credit card. Then it says, please note the following required documentation must be attached at the end of the application, without which we are unable to proceed. All that could be like, you need. Right? And then we have these two things, identity documents, I think proof of identity documents, duplicates. And then down here, we've got this unchecked yes, no radio buttons, which are like never the right thing. Right? You should pretty much never use a yes, no radio button or checkbox. So what should that look like? How about this? 2 checkboxes. Yes, I'm this. Yes, I'm that. Done. It's morphing. These are not checkboxes. I was in Singapore. I met with an airline there, and the development team were angry, bitter. I sit down, they're like, our users are old. They're old and stuck in their ways, and they won't change. They won't go to the... What's wrong? They spent $2 million building a new graphical interface for the agents. I said, let me see it. Did I mention you get old, gray, and bitter in this field? So I look at it, 20 seconds later I go, okay, what you've done is you've made tiles. So to do anything, I have to click on a tile and then type. So what I'm doing is I'm constantly moving my hand from the keyboard to the mouse, and people would rather key 3 to 8 keystrokes rather move their hand from the keyboard to the mouse, so you freaking made it worse. Which is typically the problem. So we can do all kinds of stuff. We can build devices. This is a precursor of what became the Classmate PC. 11 million units sold. We developed that. We can do stores. We're in designing stores. And here, a store has the same kind of problems a website does. You ever have a website with too much stuff on it? Right? It's a signal detection problem. Well, here's a store with the same thing. It's like you can't figure out what you can click on because there's so many different things that you can't click on. It's impressive. Here I'm working on a motor grader, actually. You can work on things like, this is a washing machine. And it was really a German washing machine. And in India, in my house, I have that model. So I learned about it. And I found out why my clothes were faded so quickly. Because it says 90 here, and I thought that's the 90-minute wash, because this looks like a timer, right? That's 90 degrees Celsius. So I was boil washing my clothes. See, I did this little C up here. Good. So we can study washing powder and medical devices, all sorts of stuff. Usability testing. Okay? One thing that really concerns me, anybody who thinks usability testing is the main part of UX doesn't get it. Usability testing is just one thing we do. And it's not as powerful as you'd think. So you run a study you're working on, say maybe for that Singapore government or Singapore Airlines or whatever it is, right? And you run a test, and what you find is you have 2 designs. Design A has really good performance. Design B is not nearly so good. Which one do you recommend? A. Okay, but I just tested it for an hour. And what if that interface, which will be used for years, the performance looks like that over time? So usability test measures self-evidency, okay. But it doesn't measure long-term use well. Very typically, so I have a command-based system, I have to learn it, but then it's really fast, or a menu system, and I don't have to learn it, but it's really slow. So what do? We just run the test and report it. So this is the thing where this is a complicated field. And you just go like, oh, we're running usability tests. usability testing doesn't work for things that are used for a long time. Basically, you have to do math models and look at how physically efficient it is. All right, so we've talked a little bit about UX. Short time, but it's okay. And I want to mention the idea that, which is getting better now, but for the last 2-3 years, UX has been really hot, and there's been lots of counterfeit UX. And I find it really depressing. Right? So these are ours, right? We make pretty designs. Okay, and of course this has to, that's just like the smoke moves, right? Whatever the latest thing is. So UX is not graphic artwork. And pretty screens can be the right thing, but I'd like to draw your attention to the highest value interfaces in the world. Okay, so we have Facebook. Facebook has blue. Amazon, they ran out of blue, but they had a little bit left. YouTube, they couldn't afford even the blue. Fidelity, fantastic design, green. So today, what makes an interface persuasive is not usually pretty graphics. It's other stuff. So one of the things, so if it's like, yeah, we do UX and we're all graphic artists, that's counterfeit. Another thing that some organizations do, more in China than here, is they go, we're going to do eye tracking, oculometer, so I can watch the eye movement. So tell me, on this, what are we learning from watching the eye movement? Oh, come on. Like, what design shape? What did we learn? Boobs. Right, participant is a guy. Right. So I've been doing eye tracking since 1972, and I helped build one. But it's a good research tool, but it's not okay to think that that's a major part of design projects. It's not effective. It's not. Another thing that's common today is customer experience design, which used to just mean UX. But now folks have said, oh no, this is something different. And what they're doing is what in the early 80s we called performance analysis. I do a customer journey map, which we used to call a task analysis. Now it's a customer journey map, which sucks. And I find the places that are a problem and I try to fix them. This is an okay thing, but it's the lowest skill thing that there is in the field, which is why people like doing it. It's like you don't really need a lot of training. It's like, oh, people fall and break their arm here. Okay, let's put a railing. It's like, okay, fine. But you can't build a big system this way. It's not a system development methodology. It's a system improvement method, right? So this is not for system development when they're doing it that way. And it's not very high value. I couldn't believe this. So years ago, 12 years ago, I set up this certification program because no one else would. And now we have like 7,000 people certified. And I did it because I saw this coming. And last year I actually found it. This is a YouTube of a guy saying how to pretend to be a UX designer in a job interview. And people are saying like, oh, you know, you're a gift, from blessing from God. It's like, I'm making this up. So yeah, the counterfeit thing is a bit intense. So the executives go, Forrester told me customer experience is important, and what we're going to do is stand up in front of everybody and give them a speech about how important the customer is. We love our customers, and they put up a sign and little posters, but it's not a motivational problem. There's no one in the bank trying to make the banking hard. It's like the first joke I remember when I was a kid. I grew up in New York City, and so there's a bus broken down at the bottom of the hill. Driver gets out, grabs this woman's chihuahua little dog, ties it to the front of the bus. The woman says, "What are you doing with my chihuahua?" He says, "I have to get the bus up the hill." The woman says, "Chihuahua can't pull a bus." The driver says, "No problem, I have a whip." It's not the right approach. And then they'll do things like wrong stuff. We're doing agile, we're putting users in the group. It's like, I was working with this German company, and it's like, you're putting users in. It's like, yeah, how do you pick them? They run fast or something? We're making shoes, so and so users are not designers. And putting them in that meeting actually makes it worse. You get a bunch of crap. We do the training, right? But if you just get training from us and you get dropped back into an environment that doesn't know what you're doing, it doesn't appreciate why you would do it, and doesn't give you time to do it, and doesn't give you methods or standards or knowledge management or anything else, none of the tools are there, none of the, so what the hell? How much can we do? It'll be a little better. Take the training. Or you can hire some expensive consultants and they come in. You would think I would go like, that's good, right? But in reality, if you're a big organization and like Age of I comes in, we do a design, everyone's like, "Oh, that's really great." And then they applaud, and then we walk away, go away, and that degrades over time, and what happens? That's not a solution. And then the real problem, Sony's doing this. It's like the executive CEO goes, "Oh, we have a real problem." So the executive goes, "I know, I'm really going to be like that." Jared Spool wrote, "This is not even the direction anymore. It's about building in an industrial scale." So he wrote, and actually it's funny because we had at Kai, we had a session called the Celebrity Death Match, where we debated whether you could institutionalize UX. And his position was, you can't do it. My position is I'm already doing it, so I thought I won. But now he's saying that's true. So if you're thinking about your UX organization, which are you? Because this kind of sums it all up. When you think about the difference between a street gang and a military organization, and ask yourself, if these guys are going to fight, which group do you want to stand behind? So industrial strength UX is faster, cheaper, better. There's nothing good about doing it by craftsmanship. We're more creative, we're more effective. Doing it on a serious scale is the right way to go. And 15 years ago, I went, we know how to make things usable, but we don't know how to do it on an industrial scale. And I started writing and working on the question of how you institutionalize UX. The second edition came out last year. Now you don't have to buy it. Because this is the message of that book. You want to do UX? You have to do it as setting up a practice built into an organization with the right culture. You can't do it by like some nonsense. I hired Jim. Call Jim. You've done UX. It's like... So this is what it takes to do industrial strength UX. You need an executive champion. And today we get a lot of like executives signing off, all in, yay. Of course, they don't know what it takes yet. Right? But you need an executive champion who will not just fund it, but work on the culture for you, break the log jams, help with the political fights. You've got to have that. If you don't have that, you're going, okay? You can look at a given organization and say, where are they? How excited are they? This one's excited. They'll spend money. Governance sucks. They're doing about half of what they should do. And they have pretty much nothing in place. Okay? This one's a little better governance. none of the advanced stuff, more stuff in place. So you can have a roadmap that says, how do we set up a UX operation, and your executive champion should own that roadmap. We need methods. If you make it up each time, you're an amateur. Fully documented methods means I know what I'm doing. I'm not doing UX. When they say do that, take a week, you can go, let's go through what I have to do and just tell me how I do it in a week. Okay? And you have to have that built into the organization's system development lifecycle. You need standards. This is from an organization. It's like I have back, cancel, and start again in one interface. It's like, did I need that? Oh, good. This is so you need staff. This is here, and the staff need to be trained. And solid training is really important. You can't just say, oh, I do UX. You're trying to reinvent the field. And those courses go through like quarterly updates and all that. Certification, I think we're up a little higher than that now. Usability test labs. The value of a usability test lab is interesting. So I'm at that company in Germany. And there's this huge black building. It's like, is that a starship? It's like enormous, incredibly fancy. And they're like, no, that's the brand building. They're like, we have a usability test lab too. So we walk all the way around. And they have a little, like an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Somebody wrote usability test lab and pointed up the stairs. And walk up the stairs. And there's another little sign. I'll walk up the stairs. You go in, then there's this room that they've like, somebody left, so they just gutted it and they made a usability test lab. It tells the organization how important it is. It's not necessarily about that we need a usability test lab. Yeah, we kind of do. But when the executives come in and look at it, I mean, the one we set up at Standard Bank, 16,000 square feet. It looks like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And yeah, we use it regularly, but the value of it as a marker of the importance. And we have to handle knowledge management. I have a client today, and we're setting up this practice for them. And I said, well, have you got historical records of your users and your studies? Yeah, 7 terabytes. You can't find anything. So one of the things we've been working on is how do you, instead of building up terabytes of stuff you can't find anything in, how do we operate in a way where we don't reinvent the wheel each time? So we built a tool set for that. And we're doing basically object-oriented UX. Okay, so there's a journey of maturity. That's all I wanted to say. This is an organization, level 5 in India. When that was announced, their stock price went up 5.3%. So it's important. And here we're actually setting up a whole practice, 51-person practice. All of the methods, all the standards, setting up the staffing, hiring people. If you want to move to India, no, okay, never mind. So, been in South Africa for about 8 years, India 15. And it's good to see it moving, South Africa. It is moving. But it's got a long way to go. We need to build the people with the skills and the experience. And I believe that this can be part of South Africa's success. And being in this room for me is really wonderful, seeing all of these colleagues for coming along. It's very different than it was. And so please, let's move the field ahead. All right, thank you. minutes for questions. Any questions? It depends what your strategy is. So if I want to make something fun, actually both my sons, my older son has a PhD in usability of computer games. My second one is just finishing his PhD, usability of computer games. Second one is particularly interested in what makes games fun. And it's really cool because he studied under a guy, Mahalia Csikszentmihalyi. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's the guy on Flow. And when I did my doctorate, he was like core to my doctorate. And then my son, like 30 years later, is doing under the same guy. And we know how to make a game fun. And it's not just pretty. So, yeah, graphics are probably part of it. But there are other things we build in that create a sense of flow, excitement, challenge, fiero. There's a whole set of things. There's a whole science of how to make a game fun. And yet, it should probably be pretty. There was somebody in.
Just for me, actually, it's a different question than I had before, but you've answered that one. Is in a lot of our organizations, we've got the UX team and we've got a UI team. And there's a lot of sort of cross-pollination between the two teams, and then it becomes quite difficult. Oh, hi. It becomes quite difficult then from an organization to say, how do we work together to make the product or the service as compelling and as meaningful as possible when you've got these two distinct disciplines who sort of meld into each other. I'm just wondering on your opinion on that and any cases.
Yeah, one of the things that I skipped because the slides were corrupted was the org structure part. So you can create an org structure that means it just won't work. And I did that with one insurance company in New York. We did a review and I came in and like, yeah, with this org structure, you'll fail. And like the executive's like, I made the org structure. That was good. He's starting to get over it. But getting the right org structure, you can break UX. No, we don't have a research team and a separate design team and hope that somehow the PowerPoint deck conveys everything, right? We don't have the UI designers and the UX people, and you just don't do that. There's only one way to organize UX in a big organization. We'll have a central team that'll hopefully have reporting to them or maybe dotted line, separate groups per vertical or area. Now, who that reports to is a big conversation. Yeah. Okay, so be clear, agile stuff is for the developers. Okay, we didn't come up with it and it's not good for us, right? And it builds mostly crap. Unless you have a UX team that knows what they're doing. And the UX team operating in an agile environment has to do a bunch of stuff differently. So there's a whole set of agile thinking going on. It's led by developers. You don't see a serious UX person. And lean UX is like make starving UX while you're at it. Okay? So if you want to do agile, before you now if you're building like a doggy dish, something little, it's okay. But if you're building something big, you have to do the omni-channel strategy first, the structural design first. Then you can go into detailed design in an agile environment, but you better do a design sprint before they do the development sprint, because otherwise those things will interact, make a mess, in short. But I don't really have an opinion on it. Yeah, so I need to say, design this. The developers go, hey, we can do that. Now, there are interesting questions like, we need to design a piece, right? So we do an MVP, minimum viable product. And then you look and you find there's a lot of MPs out. So part of the UX job is to say, what the hell is viable? And my best criteria so far, we're working on this, HFI Labs has got this, like, we're trying to figure out, but basically, when you say it's a minimum viable product, that means it goes out, the users get it, and they don't go, what the hell? Right? Like your product, like, yeah, it does half of it. And then it stops. It's like, okay, what the hell? Sorry.
So you say use tests, right, for showing some elements of what
It's great for measuring self-evidence, initial usage, finding places where people get stuck. Yeah, I suppose. Long-term performance, that's the one I showed you. It's a math model of physical efficiency. It's not heuristic. It says I'm going to develop a set of scenarios, basket of scenarios. I'm going to measure basically the physical work to do that, and I'm going to count up the amount of time it takes to do each task, assuming a perfect person who knows every move. You use Fitt's law to figure out the movement times and stuff.
Can we take one more question and then pause for the rest of the...
Okay, because I'm starting.
Yeah. So one last question, and then if you could...
Somebody asked about Agile, and I'm still trying to recover. Okay. Yeah. Sure, you got the day? So, Omni-Channel Strategy faces a big change in our field. See, when I was your age, I had it good. Because computers were all operated in air-conditioned rooms by a single operator with a high school education who sat on a comfortable desk and looked at a screen and did a task, maybe with a form. Today, it's not like that. Computers are frigging all over the place. You don't have an operator. You have lots of operators. And so we had to start facing the fact that I have all these people doing an infinity of scenarios in complex environments, and I got to worry about all this stuff, and something we couldn't do, like a task analysis, and I optimized it. It was much more complicated. We had to do ethnographically inspired methods to understand even the dynamics of the ecosystem. So we had to change. So you have it harder. And I have lots of devices, right? I have a USSD device, I have a mobile device, I have a computer I can use, I have an ATM, I have a kiosk, I have all this stuff. And then just like we have to worry about the structure when I build a website, what are the tabs, what do I call them, what's the information architecture, how do people understand it? I have to kind of do the same thing on that larger scale. I got a mobile device, I got a kiosk, I got a cell phone, I got a call center. How do people understand it? How does it fit together? And at the core of that is the question that I'll be leaving here very soon to answer for one organization. Why would you bank? Why would you bank with this bank? Why would you go with this telco? What are the emotions that handle it? So when we look at the complicated side, yesterday I'm sitting there and there's this techie saying, all the complicated stuff is here in this layer, and we have the services, and I'm like, no, the complicated stuff is the ecosystem. Your freaking computer algorithms are simple. Right? So you're designing for the complicated stuff, the tricky stuff, right? You get a server, it's like, oh, I have 2 terabytes. Count them, they're all there. With human beings, it ain't all there, necessarily. So we have it hard. So in the Omni-Channel Strategy, I understand why you're going to use that telco, and I design everything around that, and then I make all the channels fit together in a way that makes sense. And no, it's not mobile first. That means you don't understand. Okay? Thank you.
So